Hello and welcome to Charch Chat here at Open Sports. Thank you for joining us as we recap some of the fantasy developments from Sunday's games, Week 6. I am Paul Charchian from LeagueSafe.com. Thanks for joining us here at Open Sports. We begin with Thomas Jones. He had 3-touchdown game and felt like coming into this game he had to perform this week because he had been such a lousy producer since the opener that if he couldn't do it here against an easy opponent, we're really kind of worried. And fortunately, he stepped up big. 3 touchdowns. Now, the question is, do you sell high on Thomas Jones after his 3-touchdown game, or do you hold tight with Thomas Jones? Well, let's look at the schedule, which is such a big part of these in this analysis. His next 4 opponents, 3 of them very, very favorable. At Oakland next week, that's an easy game. Kansas City, a very easy game. Then he's got then he's got Buffalo. That's a tough one, especially in Buffalo. Then he's got St. Louis. So, you look at those 3 of those 4 very easy matchups. I think you're going to see continued production for Thomas Jones, so I would not trade him now. And if, the other side of it is, if you don't have Thomas Jones, and most of you don't, just odds are, maybe go get him, figuring that whoever's got him is going to outthink himself here, and maybe feel like he's got in a trade high moment, sell high moment for Thomas Jones might be a good opportunity. One other thing to remember, the Jets' offensive line was completely rebuilt in the offseason. Both guards changed over, and it takes offensive lines time to get together and kind of get on the same page and gel. So you got to figure this might be starting to happen now, and you're going to see better production out of the offensive line going forward than we have in the past. Next, Devin Hester. He was once again the Bears' leading receiver, and I'm beginning to feel like, regardless of Brandon Lloyd, what he might ever do, Devin Hester's the Bears' receiver to have, and while he didn't catch a touchdown last week, he has scored in 2 of the last 3 games. And, 6 catches for 87 yards is a pretty good stat line. So we're seeing his involvement really continue to ratchet up, and somebody that belongs on rosters and starting to look like a wide receiver 3 right now. Next, Steve Smith, another 100-yard game. And, I shouldn't say another because he'd been struggling to get to that threshold. He'd been getting us to 96. Good to see him go over 100, but a third key drop that would have been a touchdown in the last 2 weeks. And so, the frustrating thing for Steve Smith's owners, he's left 16, 18 points on the board, and those are tough, big differences, and so, frustrated with the fact that he's dropping balls, but they're throwing to him a lot, and I gotta believe that sooner or later he's gonna start catching those, and we're gonna get Steve Smith in the end zone. Certainly hope so. Matt Schaub, back-to-back great performances, with the only difference being that one Sage Rosenfels game in between. 378 yards. He's now scored 5 touchdowns in his last 2 starts, 309 yards the start before that. So really strong performances from Matt Schaub. And, we talked about him as a sleeper at the beginning of the year, and then he came out of the gates with a couple of bad games. Some bad defensive opponents have certainly helped his cause here. But another good game coming up, I think, for Matt Schaub, and some of you are certainly going to want to grab if he was dropped on the waiver wire before last week. And Andre Johnson, I was a little skeptical because he'd had his big breakout game with Sage Rosenfels and wasn't sure that was going to continue over with Schaub, but he was critical to that team's success down the stretch on Sunday. So it looks like he'll be a big part of that one. Let's go to the Dallas Cowboys and 2 guys that have been all over the map and frustrating some fantasy owners, T.O. and Marion Barber. For Marion Barber, just 45 rushing yards on 14 carries, and I know that was concerning to a lot of fantasy owners, but he did have the 70-yard touchdown reception. Now, we can't bank on that every week, certainly, and I think the rushing numbers are a concern for a lot of people, and, maybe rightly so. Felix Jones is there. He's not cannibalizing a lot of his numbers, but they're certainly making an effort to keep Felix Jones involved, and what worries me about both T.O. and MB3 is the schedule, and I'll get to that in a second. Let's go to Terrell Owens. The touchdowns are there, but the yardage isn't, and the receptions aren't. Hasn't topped 100 yards yet this year. He's averaging just 3.8 receptions per game. And in PPR leagues, that's killing you. I mean, that's tight end level production, not elite wide receiver production. So a lot of frustration with T.O. Now, going forward, it's hard to say that these things are definitely going to change materially for the better because the schedule's so hard. Going through the whole rest of their season, they get about 2.5 easy matchups the rest of the year, and the rest of them are hard matchups. And get a load of this playoff schedule. If you're in a good spot and you've got these 2 guys, we're through 6 weeks. If you're 6-0 or 5-1, you're heading to the playoffs, get a load of this playoff run. At Pittsburgh, then the Giants, then Baltimore. Those are 3 of the 5 toughest defenses in the NFL. I mean, that's brutal. And while, those are 2 guys that can still get theirs in any game, it means you're probably not going to have huge breakout games, or gigantic games out of them in any of those. And so you might want to think about moving them. And I know those are elite players, but it might be time. Let's go to Justin Fargas, Darren McFadden, and Michael Bush, the 3 guys that comprise the Oakland Raiders running back situation. Now, 2 of these 3, I believe, do not even belong on rosters. Michael Bush is the obvious one, gone off of rosters. Number 2, Darren McFadden. That turf toe is just not right. He's so ineffective running the ball. He doesn't look anything like the kid we saw in college, and I believe it's a lost season for him. This is not the first time I've said this on Charch Chat. I think you drop Darren McFadden outright. If you can find a suitor for him, trade him, get a little something. You're not going to get a lot. And this is a bad Oakland team that's behind in most games. They're still running the ball live. I mean, the numbers are there. But the 3-person rotation is really hurt them, although Bush without a carry last week. Even in the 2-person rotation, that's still too much to get these guys' numbers. I think Justin Fargas, as the guy who got the starting role this week, got the majority of the carries this week, not terribly effective with them, but coming off injury, I'm starting to think that he's the only guy to hold right now. And unless you're in a deep league, I think you can safely give up on the other 2 guys. And it's disappointing, but that's where we are. I think Fargas feels like the safest of the bunch, and we don't even know that he's going to get used at the goal line. That could be still Michael Bush, but can't wait around and wait for that to happen. It hasn't happened yet. Lastly, Peyton Manning and Marvin Harrison. Just when I thought it was safe to maybe give you guys a bench against a tough opponent, look what happens. All right, you got me. I'm a guy who loves to play matchups, and Baltimore was playing great defense, and those 2 guys had struggled considerably. Well, all right, you caught us. You caught us overthinking that one. Probably won't make that mistake again. Certainly not with Manning, but with Marvin, we might pick our spots a little bit. But it was good to see him actually run away from defenders. I mean, he had looked so sluggish for much of the season. Maybe this indicates that the conditioning is back, and he never had breakaway speed, but maybe he's got enough speed to be effective again. So happy to see Manning and Harrison back again. All right, that's it for this early season. Thanks. It's a long bit on Charch Chat. We don't normally go this long. So thanks for listening to me prattle on for quite a while here at Open Sports.
So you think you can tackle a pro? There's only one way to find out. Click on fantasy at opensports.com.